Living with Narcolepsy with Cataplexy, a presentation by Fiona Mobbs. Nelson Mandela said, "Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world." I have no desire nor the energy to try to change the world, but I do have the desire to bring about change in how Australians think about sleep and sleep disorders, in particular narcolepsy. Sleep is one of the 4 pillars of health alongside mindset, exercise and nutrition, and are all necessary to maintain a well-balanced, healthy lifestyle. Yet education and awareness around sleep and its importance to our overall well-being does not receive the same exposure or attention. It's easy to take sleep for granted when it's something that is done without effort or thought. And while some may have the odd day where they wake up feeling like they didn't get enough sleep, it's usually temporary and a result of lifestyle choices which can be resolved with a nap or going to bed earlier the next night. But what happens if, regardless of the choices you make or how much sleep you get, that odd day turns into every day? Like many kids, I was active and energetic. I grew up riding horses and I loved being outdoors. At 18, I joined a gym and even went on to become a fitness instructor. My passion for fitness ventured outside of the gym when a friend introduced me to long distance running. At school, I worked hard to achieve good grades. Learning did not come easily to me, at least that's how it felt given the amount of effort I put in compared to my peers. It took discipline and determination to concentrate in class and do extra study hours at home, but it was the only way I could stay on top of my schoolwork and do well. I am thankful for these qualities of determination and discipline. They helped me time and time again during adulthood, both in my working life and my role as a single mum. Life in my 20s and 30s was good, and even better as I approached my 40s. I had a responsible job, I was raising a family, I had a social network, and I volunteered with various organisations. Looking back, I know that I was experiencing symptoms of narcolepsy years before my diagnosis, as many do. However, managing other health issues and being a single mum, working full-time, I always found a reason to dismiss any symptoms. In my early 40s, I found myself falling asleep involuntarily more and more often during the day. On the train to and from work, at my desk, during meetings, even at the hairdresser's. With my brain feeling foggy, concentrating for long periods became difficult. At work, I struggled to recall information and I would forget what I read within seconds of reading it. Words and sentences I typed made no sense and I would have to start over, which impacted greatly on my productivity. This prompted me to visit my GP for answers. I explained what was happening and how sad and stressed I felt, struggling to stay awake. I was diagnosed with depression and put on antidepressant medication. The antidepressants helped with my outlook on life for a while. However, they didn't stop me wanting to sleep all the time. Being misdiagnosed with depression, as well as other medical conditions, is a common occurrence for people with narcolepsy, resulting in lengthy delays to diagnosis and effective treatment. As time went on, my symptoms worsened and became more frequent and more frightening. I started to doubt myself and lost confidence in my abilities. The line between what was real and what wasn't became harder to distinguish. Auditory hallucinations kept me awake and scared most nights, and full-body cataplexy episodes occurred anywhere and everywhere. This, combined with the relentless pursuit of sleepiness consuming my entire body, made me feel like I was going crazy. A public episode of cataplexy landed me in hospital once again, but this time I wasn't discharged immediately afterwards. I spent a week in hospital being examined by various teams of experts, including neurology, respiratory, and endocrinology. After thorough investigation, I was discharged with a diagnosis of a possible functional neurological disorder and given a follow-up for a sleep study. I was finally getting somewhere. After undergoing that sleep study in March 2017, just before my 47th birthday, I was diagnosed with narcolepsy with cataplexy. I finally had a name for this intruder in my life. Everyone has a different reaction to a diagnosis, and over the years of chatting with other people with narcolepsy, it has been interesting to hear some of them. I felt relieved. I felt shocked but happy to finally have an answer. I felt like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I thought, finally, I can get on with my life. There's also been differences in the delivery of the diagnosis, with some specialists taking the time to explain what narcolepsy is and how it can impact their patient's life, to others who offered little to no advice or comfort, as if it's no big deal. No matter how they reacted initially, once they gained insight into their condition, one thing which resonates among those diagnosed with narcolepsy is the feeling of, I wasn't prepared for that. I've heard comments such as, I felt relieved. However, that feeling of relief did not last long. I felt shocked but happy to finally have an answer. But that answer created more questions that nobody had answers to. I felt like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders, but it soon returned even heavier as the reality of my new life set in. My response to my diagnosis was, finally, I can get on with my life. It was delivered with indifference, giving me the impression that it was no big deal. After gaining insight, my confidence was short-lived when the medication didn't fix everything the way I expected it to. It is my own insight into this condition and the lack of information and support I was offered at diagnosis which ignites my inner introvert to speak up so that others don't have to go through what I did. There are 5 main symptoms of type 1 narcolepsy. However, not all symptoms are experienced in the same way among individuals, if at all. They are excessive daytime sleepiness. People with narcolepsy feel extremely sleepy during the day. Irrespective of stimulant medication or how much we sleep, we never feel refreshed or recharged. Everyone knows what it's like to feel tired, but tiredness is temporary. Excessive daytime sleepiness due to narcolepsy is permanent and it is relentless. Cataplexy. It was my own experiences with cataplexy which pushed me to find an answer and would later drive me to help raise awareness and understanding of narcolepsy with cataplexy. From the outset, my cataplexy episodes were severe. They were full body and lasting anywhere from 15 minutes to 45 minutes, some even much longer. It was difficult to find a health professional who believed me when I described them, and for a while I even hid the severity of them from my peers, afraid that they too would disbelieve me, especially if they didn't experience cataplexy that way themselves. Can you imagine being unable to move your entire body for any length of time or communicate what's happening? When I experience a full body cataplexy episode, I am conscious and aware of my surroundings. However, I am unable to open my eyes, move, or speak. Sleep paralysis. I am thankful that I don't experience many episodes of sleep paralysis these days, but I can remember in the earlier days of diagnosis having them quite regularly upon waking. On those mornings, I would be quite late for work with a reason which sounded implausible. Hallucinations. Hallucinations are more than just a bad dream. They can be both frightening and confusing. They can feel so real that when we experience them, it can be hard to acknowledge that it is not really happening, especially if we are alone when they occur, as there is no one to reassure us otherwise. Disturbed nighttime sleep. It is not unusual for me to feel extremely sleepy all day, but then not be able to fall asleep until the early hours of the morning. Or if I'm lucky enough to fall asleep at a reasonable hour, I will usually wake up again 1 or 2 hours later and then repeat that cycle several more times throughout the night. It's hard for someone without narcolepsy to understand that their tiredness does not even come close to the sleepiness that people with narcolepsy experience 24/7. For me, a life once filled with spontaneity and adventure became a life of planning and calculation. Every task, activity, and interaction no longer just happens without adequate preparation. Driving may require me to take a 20-minute nap first, or even someone else to drive me depending on the time of day and how far I need to go. If I'm going to be out all day, I need to know that there will be somewhere for me to nap if needed, and I'm always conscious of the fact that I may have a cataplexy episode. Travelling alone on public transport is no longer a safe option for me, and I don't visit my favourite trails anymore due to the travel distance and insufficient energy to concentrate on driving home afterwards. Our bodies can feel like they're weighted down, making the simplest of tasks, like waking up and getting out of bed in the morning, difficult. We often feel guilty that we can't just get up and go. That weighted feeling fluctuates all day, temporarily relieved by a 15 to 20-minute nap, then it quickly returns. Imagine a backpack full of heavy weights strapped to your back and weights strapped around your ankles. No matter what you do, you can't remove them, and they're invisible. No one knows you're carrying them, or the effort required for you to keep going. Sure, you can remove some of the weight once or twice a day for 20 minutes, but then you have to put it back. Do you think you would struggle? Do you think you would still be able to go about your normal daily activities? That's how I feel. And what if you were told that you must live this way for the rest of your life? For me, managing the relentless sleepiness of narcolepsy is a constant juggling act, feeling the need to appear normal, balancing the expectations we have of ourselves to perform and the expectations of others, choosing between what we might want to do for ourselves and what we may want to do for others, the reality of how we feel compared to how others think we feel. I don't mind people telling me they feel tired because I understand, but I prefer they not compare their tiredness with my sleepiness, because that's when I feel that they don't really take my condition seriously. For me, navigating life with narcolepsy felt a lot like the description for orienteering. Orienteering is a sport that involves using a specially produced map and compass to navigate your way between various checkpoints along an unfamiliar course. Participants must balance the fatigue of running or cycling as fast as they can with the mental alertness required to read a map and make calculated decisions about which direction will bring them to their destination the quickest and not get lost along the way. The first few years after being diagnosed with narcolepsy are probably the hardest. It takes time to adapt to your new life and the possible side effects of medication as well. Newly diagnosed patients can feel completely lost and overwhelmed. For many, there is also a grieving process as they come to terms with the enormity of their loss. Initially, I was in denial, believing that my life was going to continue as planned. I took my medication religiously, expecting it to alleviate my sleepiness and cataplexy episodes entirely. I was excited about feeling normal again and being able to get back to running and socializing with my friends. As time went on, though, I still felt sleepy. I still experienced regular cataplexy episodes, sleep paralysis, and auditory hallucinations. I started to feel frustrated and even angry. It was hard not to feel hopeless and fearful about my future, especially when I realized that medication alone was not enough long term. It had definitely helped, especially with the cataplexy. I went from having up to 5 episodes a day to up to 5 episodes a week. That alone was a huge reprieve and one that I was very grateful for. But I wanted and I still expected more. I blamed myself for not coping better and I was angry at my body for betraying me. I tried harder and harder to push myself to keep up with my workload, my children, my friends, and my household chores, but it only made my symptoms worse. I soon discovered that if I did too much one day, I would end up spending the next 1 to 2 days in bed, barely able to move. This was not an option long term. I became increasingly anxious, jealous of everyone around me getting on with their lives, and my mood became as unpredictable as my symptoms. I later realized that my mood changes coincided with how sleepy I was feeling. So the sleepier I became, the harder it was to concentrate or think rationally, and everything around me seemed to be amplified. If I was in the middle of doing something and struggling, I would become irritable with myself, but take it out on others. Just like a toddler that gets cranky and unbearable when they are tired or hungry. I soon learned not to deny the urgent call of daytime naps, but instead make them a priority as I did with my medication. Having my own narcolepsy journey map and compass would have better prepared me for this initial stage of my journey. Directions would have made the transition between checkpoints much smoother and easier to navigate, and I would have found my new way forward in life a lot quicker. People with narcolepsy also have a higher risk of depression, so it's important to be mindful of this and actively engage in ways to manage and support your mental health. Some of the ways I look after my mental health are through exercise, fresh air and sunshine, meditation, nutrition, fostering good relationships, self-care, and participating in activities that both challenge and relax my mind. Looking after my mental health has a positive impact on my narcolepsy symptoms too. Please consult with a health professional if you feel like you're not coping. Some medication can make depression worse, so it's important to be aware of this. And again, discuss any concerns you may have with your treating health professional. Finding what works best for new patients in managing their symptoms takes time. Don't compare yourself and what you can and can't do to other people living with narcolepsy. Don't be discouraged if medication or other treatment strategies that work for others don't necessarily work for you. The way you experience narcolepsy symptoms is unique to you, and therefore your approach and treatment plan should be tailored accordingly. Support. I can't stress enough how important it is for those newly diagnosed with narcolepsy to find a strong support network as soon as possible. This could include family members, friends, loved ones, health professionals, community groups and services, or other peers with narcolepsy. Surrounding ourselves with people who see our accommodations for symptom management as a necessity rather than an obstacle can help us to maintain an active social life. For me, it not only helps me to feel comfortable when I do go out, but I also appreciate their understanding if I must cancel at the last minute. Narcolepsy is a life-changing event. No matter what age you are when you're diagnosed, living with narcolepsy is challenging. The more you learn about it and how it can impact your body and your life, the more confident you will become managing it. While there is currently no cure, lifestyle changes, ongoing medication adjustments, flexibility, patience, support, and education will help to develop your coping skills. Every day will require you to make choices and sacrifices which fit in with the limitations of your condition, yet you will be expected to function in the same way that people without narcolepsy do. This is the true strength of a person living with narcolepsy that people rarely see. According to Wikipedia, acceptance in human psychology is a person's assent to the reality of a situation, recognizing a process or condition, often a negative or uncomfortable situation, without attempting to change it or protest it. A life-altering event such as being diagnosed with an incurable medical condition is a significant loss, one which must eventually be accepted, but only when ready to do so. Otherwise, there will be an ongoing struggle between what was and what is. Initially, I didn't think there was anything to accept about my narcolepsy diagnosis, other than it had a name and I had more medication to take. This was because I didn't understand what it was or the impact it would have on my life. When I did come to understand, I couldn't see anything positive about a future with narcolepsy, and so accepting the reality of my situation only felt like defeat. In my mind, it was easier and much more appealing to keep trying to live my pre-narcolepsy life rather than face the truth and find a new path. Besides, as a single parent, I had two beautiful children who were relying on me to keep putting one foot in front of the other. What I didn't realize, however, was that by not accepting the reality of my situation, but instead holding on for far too long to someone who no longer existed, I was preventing myself from moving forward. About 2 years ago, I decided that I could no longer keep pushing myself to appear normal just to please everyone else and their expectations of me. It was making my symptoms worse, increasing my anxiety levels, and causing great despair. I had had enough of feeling worthless and ashamed of who I was. If I couldn't even meet my own expectations of myself, how could I meet the expectations of others? It was time to stop living in the past, accept what had happened and who I am now. When I first started advocating for those living with narcolepsy, in the hope of raising awareness and understanding, I was 2 years into my diagnosis. It wasn't easy. I felt like a nervous door-to-door salesperson trying to convince people I had something important to offer. If a metaphorical door was closed in my face, I took it personally. Once I finally accepted my life with narcolepsy, I became even more passionate about my advocacy and started putting one foot in the door so people couldn't close it on me. If they did, however, I learned not to take it personally and I moved on. There'll be good days and bad days. Some days I can get out of bed early, some days I can't get out of bed until midday or later, and other days I can't get out of bed at all. Some days I achieve a little, others a lot. No 2 days are the same, and that's the unpredictability of narcolepsy. But in accepting this, I can create achievable and realistic expectations that help me to live a happy and fulfilled life. Some key take-home messages for health professionals. Newly diagnosed patients need information and support that will not only prepare them for the physical impact narcolepsy is going to have on their lives, but to also prepare them for the psychological impact that comes with the diagnosis of a life-changing, incurable medical condition. Relevant information and support should be offered both in print and online educational resources. Suggest community organisations and patient support groups. Give referrals to mental health specialists or other appropriate health professionals. And book a follow-up appointment within a month of the diagnosis. Validate your patient's experiences. Don't compare them to other patients or assume they all experience the same symptoms or in the same way. Ask questions about your patient's life before narcolepsy. This will give you a better understanding of how their lives have been impacted by narcolepsy and how you can help them to find a new normal. Be upfront with your patients about the limitations of medication and how it can assist with symptom management, but not eliminate their symptoms entirely. Let them know that they may need to try a few different medications before they find the one that is most effective for them. This will help to prevent any false hope or expectations your patients may have. Warn your patients about the medication's potential side effects. These can add further symptoms as well as intensifying existing ones and make narcolepsy symptoms worse too. Acknowledge that living with narcolepsy is a lifelong journey that will impact all areas of your patient's life, including work, home, driving, relationships, school, university, and extracurricular activities. Reassure your patients that they have your support as they navigate these challenges. This will help them to feel confident about the road ahead. Work with your patients to create a treatment plan that will look after and monitor their entire well-being. Including them in this process will encourage them to remain positive and set realistic goals that can be celebrated upon achievement. And just lastly, I'd like to share that being an advocate, raising my voice and speaking in public is way out of my comfort zone, but it's something I push myself to do for 2 reasons. Firstly, because the comical portrayals, the misinformation and misconceptions about narcolepsy dismiss its severity, leading to the stigmatization of those living with it. And secondly, I believe that the best way to support earlier diagnosis, improve access to effective treatment options, and provide better support to and look after the mental health of those living with narcolepsy is through education. Only then will we begin to understand the complexities of this disorder and the significant impact it has on people's lives. Thank you.